Riley Gaines is a 12-time NCAA All-Time American and former college athlete who has become a leading advocate for fairness in women's sports. She has testified on Capitol Hill, spoken at major conferences, and visited college campuses across the country. Today, she's one of the most strongest voices in the fight to protect women's athletics. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ms. Riley Gaines.
What a joy it is, if that's the word you want to use, to be back on this campus. I think back to 2 years ago. Since then, really, I've made it my mission to get on college campuses to really engage with and mobilize the youth. I think we're a demographic that's often left out of these important deemed political conversations, but it's being on this campus 2 years ago that really sparked that in me. I imagine maybe some of you have heard about that incident. I'm going to take you through it. I'm going to walk you through it because, again, being here, it's almost, I've gotten to relive it. Honestly, seeing many of the same officers who failed entirely 2 years ago. So I got here, again, it was almost 2 years to the date. I show up to campus. I was set to meet the campus police department around 5:30. We were set to meet at a parking garage that had been coordinated through the students. I'm there, I'm waiting. Campus police does not show up. We wait for about 15 minutes. We figure, no big deal. We'll assess the threat as it comes. We'll go to the event venue. So we go over to the room where the event is to take place. Several officers were there in plain clothes and in uniform. None took the time to introduce themselves to me, to make some sort of exit strategy if anything were to arise in the way that, of course, it ended up going. But no big deal. I wasn't really concerned at the time. The students had told me that the officers planned on locking the external doors to the building when the room reached capacity, which the room reached capacity very quickly and almost entirely with protesters, which again, no big deal. I was actually pretty excited to give a speech to a room of people who maybe didn't agree with me, right? That is the intent, that is the purpose. I don't want to preach to the choir. I love speaking to those who maybe are on the fence or who are in opposition to the stance that I've taken. I delivered the speech. Again, it went off really without a hitch. I was able to engage with the students afterwards in a Q&A format. They threw everything my way, to which I was very able to answer. There was really nothing on this topic that really can trip me up because it is so entry level. Anyways, after that, after the speech concluded, immediately after it concluded, actually, as the speech was going on, I hear protesters outside chanting, screaming. Again, I have no problem with that. That is every right. They have every right to be doing that, just as I have every right to be here. But I began to feel a bit unnerved when I heard those protests and the screams getting louder and louder and closer until they were right outside the door, which again, I had been warned that the doors would be locked. Still wasn't overly concerned. Nothing I hadn't dealt with before, a little screaming and chanting. One side of the hallway, we're on the 3rd floor of this building. One side of the hallway, these protesters, hundreds of them, audibly what I could tell was hundreds of them. One side would yell, "Trans rights are under attack." The other side would yell back, "What do? We fight back." It went on for a while, but as the speech began to close out, it went quiet in the hallway. So I was under the impression that the protesters outside had left. But in what felt and seemed to me like a very coordinated effort, the protesters who were in the room, they stood up, they opened the door to the classroom, and in doing that, a swarm of protesters rushed in to the classroom. It was incredibly disorienting, to be honest with you. The lights were flickering, on and off, off. You see men in dresses, you see women with beards, all with their fists in their air, coming at you full speed. I was so confused in this moment. Truthfully, it was more than scared. I was confused, disoriented. What's happening? Within seconds, I'm swarmed, ambushed, fully accosted, where these students, again, fists are flying. I'm being physically hit. A woman who's actually here today, who did not make a prior introduction before, wearing all black clothes, a black mask, covering her face. She approaches me, she says, "Come with me, I'm the police." I didn't believe her. Why would I believe a woman who was fully covered, again, who made no indication prior to this that she was with the police? But didn't really have much of a choice. It was either go with this woman or stay and be mobbed. So I reluctantly, and being pulled by her, we couldn't go out the door that the protesters were still swarming into. But there was another door in the back of the room that connected to another classroom. We go out that door, we go into the hallway, to which is, again, on both sides, both stairwells are swarmed. We couldn't leave the building. So we divert pretty quickly into another classroom, which would ultimately become like my prison for the next 4-ish hours. Being in that classroom, listening to the protesters on the outside, screaming, chanting, yelling, the most obscene, profane, heinous things you could possibly imagine for hours, wishing death upon me, wishing death upon my family, wishing death upon the officers, calling the officers racist pigs for protecting a white girl like me. Anyways, in these moments, I'm still confused. I have a flight that evening. I was gonna take a red eye back home to Nashville. And so I'm talking with the officers, what just happened? Why didn't you guys meet me at the parking garage like the students had coordinated? They said, well, there must have been a miscommunication. Okay, but then why weren't the doors locked like you said they were going to be? Well, there's a lot of doors, is what they said. So we're stuck in this room. I'm looking for clarity, I'm looking for answers, I'm looking for reassurance more than anything, right? Like that was crazy, right? To which they said, sorry, we can't engage in this conversation with you right now. We have to remain apolitical, unbiased. I sat in that room for 4+ hours, again, listening to the protesters on the outside. At one point, argue for ransom, right? How much were they going to charge to ultimately allow me to leave, to let me see my family, make it home safely again? Numbers were being thrown around. The dean of students ends up showing up. Bear in mind, it's like 11 o'clock, maybe midnight at this point. The dean of students starts negotiating with the students how much they owed, or how much I owed each of them to be able to leave, which the price that was ultimately agreed upon was $10 each, which makes me mad because I think I'm worth more than $10. Anyways, in these moments, again, I was really tired too, right, with the time change. I left really early from Nashville that morning. I had effectively been up for about 24 hours at this point. I remember looking at one of the officers again, who told me he had the pleasure of heading up this event tonight, which if it were up to me, he would not be in this room tonight. And he looked at me and he said, or I looked at him. I said, I just want to go home. I knew I missed my flight at this point. My flight was like at 11 p.m. I knew I missed it. It was long gone. I said, I just want to go home. He said, it's a bit selfish. Don't you think I want to go home too? I lost it.
Go home, loser bitch. Go home now. Go home, loser bitch. Go home. Go home, loser bitch. Go home, loser bitch. Go home, loser bitch.
Go home.
I'm not leaving. So go home, you fucking loser bitch. I'm not gonna leave. Hey, guess what? Why'd you tie for 5th fucking place against 4 cis women? How'd you lose to 4 cis women, you loser bitch?
We'll get into that.
Okay, remove me, motherfucker. I'm not moving. You're gonna
They will
carry
move
me
you,
out of
brother.
here.
You will move. I promise you, you will
fucking
move.
bitch.
You will move.
Loser bitch. No, fuck you.
Chair so they can drag him out.
You're not.
And I just want to
Drag him
There's
reiterate,
a
out.
loser ass bitch right here.
Drag him
I don't.
out.
She should not even be in this fucking campus.
Fuck off,
How can you treat-
You're not a man.
Drag him out.
You're
You're
right.
not gonna stop
You're
them.
right. I'm not a man, motherfucker. You're right. Get out, you fucking loser bitch. Get the fuck out.
and I want to reiterate the point
Okay, give it.
that right now,
Get the fuck
the
out.
officers are
Loser
doing
bitch.
nothing
Loser bitch.
Don't you have something else to do? Don't you have something else to do?
Officer, loser bitch.
Everyone on your side.
Loser bitch.
Officer! What the fuck?
Four
Move!
women. You lost to four cis women. Four cis women you lost to. Four. Count 'em. Four.
What are you doing here?
Take him down.
You should be four cis women. Four cis women. Four cis women.
Took a long time, but amen.
The thing is, that does not scare me. There's a lot that does scare me. A little toothpick who maybe weighs all of 130 pounds wet, that does not scare me. No. Listen, it's not body shaming. It's the effectiveness of what we just saw. Again, what was his point in doing
I
this?
agree with what he said, but I don't agree with body shaming either.
It's not body shaming.
Stop being so
Reality,
sensitive.
you
Stop being so
probably weigh
sensitive.
130
Stop.
pounds. I'm going to keep going with where I left off because it feels timely. In the way that that had to go on for what, 2 minutes before anyone does anything, before anyone
Yeah, if I would have done something, I would have been
and said
arrested.
something. It's ridiculous. Again, I am the biggest supporter of law enforcement. But what we have seen effectively on this campus, what we saw at UC Davis last week, is not law enforcement, it is law unenforcement. I think is the best way to describe it. So to continue on with the experience that I had, again, I'm in this room. The officer who led the man out this time is the one who looked at me and said, "Don't you think we want to go home too?"
Oh, that's
I'm
the
crying at this
one.
point.
I knew I felt
I'm
something
so
wrong about
tired.
him.
I just want to go home. Finally, I'm asking them, can something be done? They say no. You know, we can't, you know, position ourselves not on the side of those who are on the outside of the room. We must be seen as allies to this community. Again, I'm asking for how do I get out of here? Then there were no answers. There was no clarity. They said there's a system of hierarchy they have to follow. They have, you know, people above them they have to call. Their hands are tied. Who is tying your hands from doing your job?
Yeah.
Anyways, the San Francisco Police Department shows up at a point. The San Francisco Police Department shows up. They're very quick to reassure me. They say, yeah, what happened to you should not have happened to you. That's all I was looking for. And they were the first ones to say it. So they go through their protocol. They have to go out and announce, you know, we have 15 minutes to disperse. The students aren't dispersing. Ultimately, you know, however many officers had to form a diamond around me. We pushed out. There were reporters on the outside who were tweeting minute by minute what was happening, where my location was, what the plan was, where I was going to be. So they knew we were going to be going outside, so I was met with a mob of protesters outside. And once we got outside, the police released me. I'd already missed my flight. I didn't have a hotel. I didn't have anywhere to go. There was a car outside one of the students had waiting for me. There was no police escort off campus. There was nothing. No one to make sure I got to where I needed to be safely. And still to this day, I'm so shocked and disheartened, truthfully, by this. So following this, again, what 21, 22-year-old girl knows the protocols you go through to hold those responsible accountable? I didn't know who to hold accountable. Was it the university? Was it the individual students? Was it the police department, the campus police department? So I get in contact with the police following this event, and I say, I want to press charges to anyone where there are charges to be pressed. We had an interview. They conducted an interview. I had everything, told them everything I could recount about the event. They tried to schedule a couple other interviews after. I'd already told them everything at that point. I reach out several months later. They told me they launched an investigation. I reach out several months later. after hearing nothing, to which I said, got the emails here. I said, I wanted to follow up on the status of the investigation into the incident at SFSU where I was held hostage. Can you please let me know if you have completed your investigation? I wondered if you can share with me any conclusions you've reached regarding your investigation and whether any charges will be filed against the individuals who sought to threaten, intimidate, and harm me. Is there a timetable concerning this matter? Is there any additional information that you need from me? Thank you, sincerely, Riley. To which an officer responded back with, after a thorough investigation, the alleged charges in this case are unfounded and have been suspended pending further lead. This is coming from an officer who was in the room with me.
Oh my gosh.
The alleged charges. Let me show you. Does this sound alleged to you?
Nope.
Hours of this.
Don't be scared of a whole bunch of room full of fucking transphobes.
Oh, you just get paid to be transphobic. There's a difference.
You just being paid to protect the transphobes? You say, yeah, I'll get on duty for that today. Wow. Wow. All of y'all did. And that bitch ass nigga in the back who put his fucking hands on us. I ain't letting up. I ain't letting up. I don't give a fuck.
Like, you get the point. Hours and hours we endured this.
Well, thank you for coming back.
I'm thrilled. Because let me tell you, again, in those 2 years, really because of that incident, first of all, it backfired entirely on the people who intended to shut me down, to stifle my speech, to deter me. It really had the exact opposite effect. It gave me a bigger platform. It gave me credibility. And now we travel with real men.
Amen. Amen, brothers. Amen, fellas.
And to reiterate, because I don't want to stand up here and make it seem like I am a part of the defund the police movement. I am not. I am the biggest supporter of law enforcement, of first responders, of our U.S. military members. I'm the biggest supporter of these people. That's what bravery is. I get dubbed as brave all the time. It's not brave to say that there are two sexes. It's not brave. That's what bravery is. But what we saw that night, what we've seen thus far this night, I would describe that as law unenforcement officers, truthfully. And it disheartens me. It breaks my heart for the students on this campus. It really does. All of that to say, I couldn't be more excited to be back here tonight. I'm not here to deliver a political speech. I'm really not. But I will say, I imagine there are many of you who share my same sentiment. That the past 10-ish weeks or so, my pillows felt a little bit better at night. The air feels a little bit clearer. It really has been win after win after win with Donald Trump back in the White House. Of course, this is coming off the heels of President Trump signing an executive order barring men from competing in women's sports within any educational program that receives funding. It was an honor to be there as he signed this order, and I'm sure maybe several of you saw the clips or the visuals or the images that surfaced following this EO signing. And it was one of the most amazing things to see all of these little girls, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, who were there surrounding him. They're in their sports jerseys, their uniforms. They've got their big bows in their hair that they wear on the soccer field. like that visual means more to me than I could possibly put into words. Day one in office, Donald Trump signed an executive order declaring there are only two sexes, male and female. Every time I've been able to engage in this conversation with those who don't agree with this executive order, right, my first question is, okay, then how many are there, right? Like, is there a finite number? And then my follow-up question is, okay, then what are they? To which they've never been able to answer those two questions. One more personal win, actually, that I can speak to, that my family has had the ability to benefit from since Donald Trump was sworn in. I met my husband, who's actually here tonight, at college. He came over to the United States in 2018. He was an athlete at Kentucky as well. We started dating pretty immediately. Got married in my senior year. Next year, it will be next month, it will be 3 years of marriage. And of course, when you, I will say it's been the biggest blessing having a rock, right, like a constant throughout all the ups and downs, and that is certainly what my husband is for me. He's the really cute 6'4" British guy who now living in Nashville has like this awesome country British accent. It's the best. Of course, when you marry alien, which is what I call him all the time, a legal immigrant who has entered into this country the right way, who has done everything correct, of course you have to go through the immigration process, which we did. We have an immigration lawyer, right? He tells us the green card process takes anywhere from 6 to 8 months max. We apply for this green card. We wait 6 months. We wait a year. We wait a year and a half. We wait 2 years. We wait 2.5 years.
You forgot one
We heard
thing
nothing.
important. Freedom. Freedom of expression.
So true. How could I forget? How could I forget that?
That man had 2 brain cells.
We waited 2.5 years and we had heard nothing surrounding the green card. So we began to inquire, right? Poking around, asking every agency, every department, what's the holdup? To which no one could point us in the right direction. We're in contact with USCIS or Immigration Services. Again, nothing until finally we get a letter to our house. And in big, bold letters, it said request for evidence. And so we opened the letter and it said his medical record is not complete. And what was missing from my husband's medical record in the year 2025? The ineffective, under-researched COVID vaccine. They said, unless you are willing to compromise on your health in this way, then you don't get your green card. Granted, bear in mind, he was still here legally. There are other ways to maintain legal residence through visa, advanced parole, other ways. He was here legally, of course, the entire time. But I'm so grateful that he was unwilling to compromise because Donald Trump is sworn into office. I pick up the phone and I make a phone call and I said, hey, did you know this mandate that I would deem illegal is still in place nationwide? He said, no, give me 2 hours. And literally within 2 hours, there was no text, no call, I saw a headline that said Donald Trump vacates nationwide mandate requiring legal immigrants to get the COVID vaccine.
That's called power.
So really, right before we came here, got this little green card in the mail. Don't know why I didn't think it was going to be a green card. Spoiler alert, it's literally a green card. So I figured we'll celebrate, right? Bear in mind, the left had found out about this. I made a TikTok and they were reporting him to ICE, right? Saying that Tom Homan was showing up at my house and he was going to get deported. Suddenly, they were in favor of mass deportation, reporting me for harboring an illegal. Again, he was here legally the entire time. So I was like, we'll celebrate, we'll have fun with this. I go to Publix. I don't think you guys have Publix here. A grocery store. I get a cake and I go to the cake decorator at the bakery and I say, can you write on this? Congrats on not getting deported. To which the cake decorator is so stunned. He's like, I think I need to go talk to my boss really quick. But he did. So all of that to say, Not really tired of the wins yet. I won't waste too much of your time sharing the specifics, I guess, of really how I have found myself here, because I could talk about it for hours. I could share with you, of course, the unfairness of it, right? When you're competing at your national championships, the pinnacle of your sport, the fastest meet in the entire world, comparatively it's faster than the Olympics because of how much depth the US has, how people from all over the world come to the US to participate in NCAA athletics. I could share with you what it's like to be standing on the block, top 8 swimmers in the entire country. You look over at the lane next to you, and there's what's very visibly a man, standing at 6'4", his size 15 feet, taking up the entire diving block, visible from his side profiles, not only his Adam's apple, but to be pretty explicit, and if I had to see it, you guys at least have to hear about it, the bulge in his women's swimsuit. I could share with you what it's like, yeah, try the locker room. I could share with you what it's like finishing that race, being told, oh, well, you don't get the trophy, because it's necessary when photos are being taken that the man is holding the trophy. I could share with you again the locker room, the feelings of violation as a woman in a vulnerable space, a place where you had been promised this level of privacy, where that is stripped from you. When you turn around and there's a 6'4", 22-year-old man fully naked, fully intact, fully exposing himself, inches away from where you were simultaneously fully unclothed. How traumatic that was, how humiliating that was, how degrading that was. I could share with you the emotional blackmail. That's what it was. It was emotional blackmail that we faced to stay quiet. How they effectively muzzled us. And I say effectively because, again, it worked, the things they said. Telling me, you'll lose all your friends if you'll speak about this. They'll never want to be your friend again. Lifelong friends. They're not going to want to talk to you if you're a transphobe. They said you'll never get a job. Your employers are going to look you up at standard practice. They're never going to hire you. Riley, you want to go to dental school? No dental school will ever even look at your application if you speak about this. Telling us, you signed that scholarship. When you did it willingly, by the way. And when you did, you gave away your rights to speak in your own personal capacity. Remember who you represent. Remember whose name is across your chest and across your cap, because it's not yours. It's ours. And understand, we've already taken your stance for you. Bringing in outside professionals, whatever that means, who sat us down, right? Those of us who had to compete against Thomas, only those of us who had to compete against Thomas, and gave us training, sensitivity training, to where they taught us, 21-year-old seniors in college, how to use she, her pronouns in a sentence. We had to keep going through this training until verbatim they felt like we had been properly re-educated. Schools would bring in outside professionals who sat the teams down and said, girls, because for a little background here, the way that I'm speaking to you all, it was pretty universal. There were varying levels of agreement to it. Some people more apt to use the pronouns, whatever it was, but it was pretty universal in saying that all of us knew this to be unfair. So they would sit us down and say, girls, what it sounds like you're advocating for, especially in regard to the locker room, sounds a lot like segregation. And who else advocated for segregation in the 1960s and prior? The KKK. And is that the side of history that you want to be on? Akin to white supremacists and racists? No, I don't think so, so just be inclusive. Bringing in other outside professionals, if you haven't caught on by now, they're all trained and brought through the LGBTQ Education Center on campus. Other outside professionals who would sit the teams down and say, girls, this rhetoric that you're using, somebody somewhere could harm themselves and it would be your fault. That would make you solely responsible, and that would make you responsible for potential death, and that would make you a murderer. And you don't want to be a murderer, do you? You don't want to have blood on your hands, no, so I suggest you be kind. That's what they said. That's why I say effective. That's why so few were willing to put their name and their face to this. Not because they thought it was righteous, or fair, or just, or moral by any means, but because they were terrified. and understandably so. Telling 20-year-old girls they're going to be white supremacists and murderers for even daring to question what was happening. Believe it or not, it works. All of that to say, I believe it's more broadly, I guess, the gender ideology movement, especially what we're seeing as it pertains to children, right? How kids, minors, are being chemically and surgically castrated for profit. Really think about that. I don't think it will be long before we holistically look back at this weird blip of time and accurately call that what it is, which is the biggest medical scandal this world has ever seen.
Yep.
More specifically, the issue of allowing men into women's sports. I believe it was the sleeper issue of the election. I believe, of course, people turned out to the polls to embrace Donald Trump, to embrace his cabinet pace, to embrace the America First agenda. But more so, I believe that people turned out to the polls to reject absurdity. And that is what the Democratic Party has become, entirely and thoroughly absurd, from top to bottom. And to be very, very clear, I don't mean Democrats. Okay, there's people who call themselves Democrats, lifelong liberals, who again, maybe we don't agree necessarily fully on this issue, but there's still, the foundation is still there. They still love America, right? That's a starting point. But the Democratic Party, in terms of certainly how the media represents it, in terms of elected representation at every level, local, state, and federal, they don't love America. And they're absurd. Whether it's referring to Latino individuals as Latinx, whether it's putting men in women's sports, whether it's putting tampons in boys' bathrooms, they've lost the ability to communicate with your everyday common sense American who intuitively knows that men and women are different. They're so out of touch with reality, and they've proven that to be true time and time and time again, which shocks me. I really believed that following November 5th, we would see the other side, again in terms of elected representation, begin to recant from their positions, slowly begin to distance themselves from their voting record. That's what the signs were pointing to, given the fact that Kamala Harris would not campaign on this issue at all. So I believe that's the direction the party was going to go. It has not been that. They have doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down, except for your fearless leader, Governor Newsom. It was amazing to me watching this podcast, right? Which I could have told you he was going to say that. I don't look at this as courageous. Clearly, he was angling at some 2028 presidential bid. He says, look, this issue is, he doesn't even just say unfair, he says this issue is deeply unfair. Not unfair enough for him to actually do something about it, because, again, he would rather be seen as kind and compassionate, literally what he said. But he really has become this professional, fence sitter, winking at both sides. It's pretty amazing. We'll get to questions at the end, but we'd love to take your question then. All of that to say, this idea that the war on woke has been won, if you want to call it that, is very flawed. People think, look, Donald Trump is back in the White House. I don't have to worry about this. It won't affect me. I trust the people in this room. No, that's not the case. Again, given the climate, the environment of where you guys live, the leadership that you have here, whether that's on this campus, again, locally, at the state level. But most people, I live in the state of Tennessee, people think we don't have to worry, we got a Republican governor. It's not gonna happen to me. That would be your first mistake. I want to send a forceful message to not become complacent. It's almost inevitable because success, which is what we've seen these wins, it breeds complacency, but complacency breeds failure. It is the enemy to growth, it is the enemy to progress. And the other side, they're relentless. It's admirable, I'll say it, and how they organize, how they unite, how they move in one unit together. It's admirable. I think we could take a page from their playbook. They don't allow themselves to be steamrolled. They don't roll over. That's why they've acquired every inch of the public square in terms of academia, right? These even at one point considered prestigious institutions are totally left-leaning and controlled by what can only be described really as activists, under the guise of maybe professors or presidents of universities. No, they're activists, okay? Hollywood, entertainment, the media, all left-leaning. Corporate America, left-leaning. It's nice to see some of these corporations begin to roll back on some of the DEI initiatives and programs, but be wary. I think they're just going to repackage those into something a little more palatable and continue to push them forward. It's admirable. The war on woke has not been won. Did you see Governor Evers of Wisconsin just 2 weeks ago? In a 1,000-page budget bill, which is how these things work, very sneaky, very deceptive, he attempted to change the word mother in their state statute to inseminated persons. There is nothing more dehumanizing than as a mother being called a inseminated persons. We've been called it all. Cervix havers, uterus owners, menstruators, bleeders, chest feeders, birthing people, like vagina havers, I don't know. Inseminated persons like really takes the cake. That's like what you refer to cattle as. Right, so I stopped reading the red line of this bill like immediately, and like the first question that pops into my mind is, oh gosh, what are they going to call fathers, right? Because like the counterpart of this would be inseminator. No, that's not what they changed father to. They changed father to natural parent. Now tell me there's not more specifically a war on women. Then like the next question in my head is, what about grandmothers? Grand inseminated persons? What about adoptive mothers? Actually, no, you're not a mom by this definitional standard. You don't qualify. What about a stepmom? You don't meet the bill. You don't qualify as a mother in state statute in Wisconsin. Really, really sick stuff. Again, we saw the protest in UC Davis, where, again, protesting, by all means, be my guest. That's the beauty of living in America. All these hands-off protests, I had a little bit of a different take than I think many people who are on my side, and I don't even really mean my side as in, partisan politics. I kind of just mean the side of common sense. They were condemning these protests. I thought it was awesome, to be totally honest with you, that in this country, you can protest this government, and the government's not going to do anything to you. This is like the only country where you can do that. I thought it was amazing to see, truthfully. I'm not just saying that. I really, really did. But those protests at UC Davis don't just stop there. There's mace. It turns violent. The war on woke has not been won. Good news and great news. The great news is that the eternal war has already been won. And that is the most reassuring, reaffirming thing you will hear today or at any point in your life. And the good news is that this worldly cultural war, of course it can be won. But that's where everyone in this room comes into play. Young, old, doesn't matter. Black, white, gay, straight, none of those identity factors matter when we're talking about ultimately winning the culture, winning the country, okay? It's going to require all of this. I'll tell you, when I first, was almost thrust into this position that I'm in now, I didn't feel like I could do something about it from the standpoint of I'm just one person, right? I didn't have a lot of social media followers. I naively believed you had to have that. It was like a conditional thing. You had to have followers to be effective, to have an impact. Again, really wrong in assuming that. Every single person, especially here in this state, on this campus, living in this city, has a circle of influence. Every single person, use that. Even if that just means having the conversation, not feeling like you have to walk on eggshells. I felt like I had to walk on eggshells for a long time. I felt like I needed to apologize for feeling the way that I felt. I look back at some of the first times I testified before a legislative body, and I literally started it out with, "I'm sorry." Well, I'm here to say I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all. For feeling the way that I feel, for feeling and understanding that women deserve equal opportunities, that women deserve privacy in areas of undressing, that women deserve to be called champions, that women deserve to maintain their dignity. I don't feel sorry for saying that. I encourage all of you to use that circle of influence that each of you have. Would love to answer any questions. This speech I gave was a little different than I normally do. So if there's anything that I can clarify or something I can elaborate on, I would love to. Is there a process for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're gonna have our Q&A line over here, and he's gonna hold the microphone. Just please remember to stay respectful and get to your question pretty quickly. Try to be brief.
First of all, I'd just like to say welcome back to San Francisco.
Thank you.
The second visit is like, I don't know, maybe just as eventful as the first.
Thus far.
I'd just like to ask, what made you decide to come back to SF State after experiencing what you experienced last?
Clearly, there's still people who need to hear the message, and that's the intent. It's been cool being on about 80 or so different college campuses thus far, and really like campuses like SF State, campuses like Cal Berkeley, Harvard, Princeton, right? Those traditionally pretty left-leaning liberal campuses, but everything in between to smaller private Christian schools. There's really not necessarily a standard you have to meet, but coast to coast, border to border, it's just been a passion of mine. And since I think the event nearly 2 years ago to the day, I'm really excited to be back here. I'm not a provocateur. I'm really not. I hope you feel that. I'm not an antagonist. I'm not trying to incite anything. I'm really not. Again, I'm just here to plainly explain my lived experience. So.
All right, a follow-up question. Do you empathize with the protesters in any way, in the sense that you're advocating for a cause like they're advocating for a cause?
Well, I think I empathize with them in the way that I understand them to be victims, oftentimes. I believe they've been manipulated. I believe they have been lied to. So of course I empathize with that. To your point, I've grown to understand that of course there are people who will never change their mind. But I'm okay with that because, I accept that now, because I'm not going to change my mind either. And I can look at this pretty, with that perspective. So by all means, again, they can stand out there. I wish they would come in here. I wish they would listen to the message. But if that's not what they feel inclined to do, and they have no intention of hearing those out who have been affected by the movement, then by all means. So I empathize with them in that way and understand that maybe they won't change their mind. I'm not going to change my mind either.
Well, appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Hello. Thank you for being here. Good evening. Sorry if this question is somewhat long-winded. I had a different question initially planned. I'm a student journalist at SFSU, and I had an interview set up with you through someone in your team that was unfortunately canceled at the last minute. I was really excited to have this conversation with you as a proponent of youth education and talking with people that have opinions that are on the fence. I was wondering if you'd be committed to engaging in future conversations with student journalists before you leave your next engagement.
I normally do engage with student journalists when they're not biased in the way that SF State was to me last time. The person who initially agreed to doing this interview agreed without my consent. I would not have agreed initially to doing an interview with the student paper here. Not because I don't want to reach an audience here. Again, that's why I am here. But last time my experience was it was not fair, so therefore I have no intention in engaging.
Just a follow-up, to be clear, this is my first year at SFSU. I was not here
Welcome.
at the time of the previous coach.
I'm not blaming you specifically.
Nor am I part of the student student paper. Would you be willing to have a conversation with an independent journalist, not affiliated with those parties that you criticize?
let's look at if that's true, and if that's the case, of course, I would love to talk with you.
So you would be willing to commit to some sort of conversation in that?
I'm not willing to commit to speaking with any representative of the San Francisco State University student body or journalism department, because again, I'm a principled person and I've made that standard for myself. But if you're saying, and you can prove that you are an independent journalist and you don't represent the university in that capacity, I would love to engage.
So to be clear, you'll have a conversation.
You just got my answer, dude. You got my answer. It's very clear.
Don't trust him.
I'm weary.
So why do you think the University Police Department suspended the investigation into your assault allegations from 2 years ago?
It's a good question. There are things that I can't disclose about, let's see how I can word this without revealing too much. There are investigations now actively in place into this university because of that event, and ultimately seeing how the administration colluded with the students to ensure that I was held captive. So I think there was, I don't actually want to insert any of my opinions. I don't know. I don't want to insert an opinion, but I mean, to say there were alleged charges from people who were in the room with me, as a woman nonetheless, as a woman who was in that room with me, I've got a lot of disdain for that, truthfully. Thanks. And I will say, following that event, the university lost around $20 million in funding. And we saw just last week. But the side effect of losing $20 million in funding is they then cut 3 sports teams because of it, which breaks my heart. It breaks my heart as the biggest proponent for everyone playing sports. That even includes people who identify as trans. Of course, but play in the category that matches your sex. I think every single person should play sports. And they've now taken 3 sports teams away. I believe it's men's baseball, men's soccer, and women's indoor track and field. But they still have their G-Spot workshop last week, so they still have funding for that. But they decided to ultimately cut 3 sports teams. So that part breaks my heart. And largely to blame because of the event that happened 2 years ago.
Hello, ma'am. I'm just confused and would like clarification. I was looking at your Instagram account, and you have come out publicly in support of Donald Trump, a known felon, but that's neither here nor there, who has reportedly made fun of a disabled man, and then turned to discredit Democratic figure Jasmine Crockett, a black one, might I add, who did the exact same, and you say that there's a difference between them. I'm just kind of confused, like, what would you say is the main difference between Donald Trump and this woman who you seem to be pretty incredibly disapproving of? I mean, you did label her as a professional race baiter.
Did you see what she said yesterday?
I'm just
I will be happy to condemn Donald Trump making fun of a disabled person.
He didn't do that.
You labeled her as a professional race baiter. I'm also just, what do you mean by that?
First of all, I'll be happy to condemn anyone who makes fun of a disabled person.
But not Trump.
I'm sitting here right now condemning Donald Trump for making fun of a disabled person.
It's fake news. Trump didn't do that.
Anyways, to speak to why Jasmine Crockett specifically is a race baiter, she said yesterday, in one of her speeches she was giving to her constituents, that she believed this country needs illegal immigrants because she's done picking cotton. We need someone we can pay less to do our crops and our farming and to pick our cotton. What she just described is slavery. That is slavery. And no one from the left, nobody, will you condemn that comment?
I've never accepted claim to be a leftist, and I'm not even sure that the woman you're speaking of, Jasmine Crockett, does she identify as a leftist? Does she represent leftists?
She's a Democrat.
Next question, please. Next question. Does she identify as a leftist? She's a Democrat member of Congress.
Ma'am, I'm not talking about fucking gender. I'm actually talking about
what are you saying?
To be.
She is a Democrat member of Congress.
Democrats
Yes,
are not leftists.
they are actually.
She is as left as you can go.
As
So,
left as you can go, and what would you describe that to be?
Jasmine Crockett. Thank you.
Hey, that's good. That's good.
Next.
Okay.
You're fired. You're fired. Go on.
I really appreciate that. I thought women supported women, guys.
You don't know what you are. Move on.
So you're telling me what my gender is?
Follow the rules.
I thought women supported women.
I'll just ask you last thing. Can you condemn her comments of calling Governor Abbott Hot Wheels?
I will condemn anyone who is outwardly let's say
Ablephobic.
That's not the word. Ableist. I will. Let's get the picture right. So, and then I would also like to say, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm not feeling very welcome in this women's.
You already asked your
women's
question.
space.
Sit down.
I'm being told that I don't even know who I am.
I'm glad you're here. Truthfully, I'm glad you're here. I really am.
I wish that I would see that from your supporters. I really wish, but they feel like I'm not a real woman. I'm just confused.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to do a quick reminder for our audience to also just stay respectful of those asking questions and Riley, because we want to be able to hear the questions and get through it pretty quick. Thank you.
Yes, hello ma'am. I'm looking at I'm curious as to what do you predict the nature of women in the swimming department in terms of sports? Where do you think that's heading with the current climate and everything? I'm curious to know.
Well, I think women's sports as a whole are on a rise. I think we have maybe specific people to thank for that. People like Caitlin Clark, who really put women's basketball, but more broadly women's sports on the map. People like Simone Biles. There are tons of female phenoms right now in the sports world that I think have contributed to women's sports and women's sports being on the rise. Women's swimming specifically, I think is at jeopardy because of a specific lawsuit, House versus NCAA. We have seen teams, even in the state of California, like Cal Poly, their women's team was cut because of NIL and funding and that kind of thing, where, again, this funding goes to football and basketball, and a lot of non-revenue, more niche, smaller sports ultimately get cut. But I think women's sports as a whole is on the rise.
Thank you. Would you welcome one more question, or do we not have
Yes,
time?
brief.
Oh, all right, briefly.
That was nice.
Do you believe the current movement that is against the movement you're standing for has anything to do with women's swimming being in jeopardy?
I'm not sure if I necessarily see that connection. I think it's more so that the people who oppose my viewpoint are so committed to just blurring the lines of reality. I don't know if it has anything to do specifically with women's swimming. Yeah. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Hi. I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I graduated from the school in 1993. I'm sure before you were born. And
7 years.
I heard about how you were treated here last time, and I just want to say I'm really sorry. That's why I came tonight. I also have a high school daughter who's a swimmer in Marin County, near here, and she has to be in the locker room and changing clothes in front of boys. And I hear this at home from her. She's had to compete against boys. It's terrible. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming back here, especially after you were treated that way before. I'm really sorry. And I would like to make, if I may, a cash donation to the Riley Gaines Center. Go back to my seat. For my sphere of influence, per your comment, could I have a selfie with you?
That's very sweet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here's a donation.
Oh, please. Well,
Here's a phone.
I want everyone to know too, because there are going to be people who say Riley was given money and she's paid to be a professional grifter and transphobe and whatever else. First of all, this money does not go to me.
It's not for you, it's for your foundation.
There's an organization. There is an organization, the Leadership Institute, which employs how many people? I mean, a couple hundred people. So it's a well-established, 200. So it's this money that doesn't go to me. There's going to be a reporter that says Riley Gaines was gifted money and she took it and she's a grifter. Yeah. So to be very clear, thank you. That's very kind. And I think to speak to the point about your daughter, it highlights so many people say it's not really happening, right? At first, well, it's it's not happening at all. Now it's just a small percentage. At some point, then it will turn into, well, yes, it is happening, but here's why it's a good thing. And then it will turn into, well, it's happening and you're going to accept it, whether you think it's a good thing or not.
Yeah,
It's incredibly widespread, again, even here in this state. And to make the point, people often make the correlation that one boy in the pool affects one girl. One boy in the pool affects every single girl in the pool. It's not a one-to-one correlation. So that one man who competed at NCAAs with us affected 14,000 women. Okay, so to just maybe help provide some clarity there. Thank you. And y'all say your daughter and I say hi.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Riley, first of all, thank you for showing to the world what real feminism looks like. Quick question. You mentioned the importance of influencing your immediate circle. Have you found, through your experience, any effective ways and strategies of getting through to people who it's so hard to get through to them beyond being called transphobe, racist, anti-vaxxer, Trumper, and so forth? Have you found such a way?
Well, like I said, I've grown to realize there are some people you can't reach. And that, at first, again, like I think being an athlete too, like victory to me or success to me, that wasn't until I achieved like convincing 100% of people.
Yeah.
And that's impossible. That's virtually impossible. So realizing that, number one. Two, honestly, what I have seen be effective is almost using their own intersectional language against them.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not one to stoop to levels, but I will give you an example. I've had the displeasure of testifying before Congress and the Senate many times now. Actually, most recently testifying before Congress, Representative Lee, Summer Lee, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, was reading her opening monologue. In her monologue, she says that I can't believe I'm forced to sit here and listen to this transphobe, this bigot, and it broke my heart. Again, that a sitting member of Congress resorts to name calling, right? Nothing based in common sense, experience, rationale. I mean, you name it. It was name calling. And so it's my turn to read my testimony, and I read my testimony, and I really didn't even mean to say this last sentence, but I accidentally did. And I looked at her and I said, Representative Lee, if I'm a transphobe, if that testimony you just heard makes me a transphobe, then understand by your own logic, you're a misogynist, which sent the hearing into a tailspin. It was as if she had never heard this word before. Her staff comes running over, her counsel comes running over, they pull up their phone. I literally think they looked up the definition.
Yeah.
Because about 60 seconds later, she raises her hand and she says, I want her words removed from the record on the grounds of engaging in personalities, which Marjorie Taylor Greene was in that hearing, and so she buzzes in, and she says, I would call a man posing as a woman someone who's engaging in personalities. Yeah. And then it's like the Jerry Springer show. What have I done? She attempted to then, again, history erased, have my words removed as if it never even happened, because she was so embarrassed to be called that because she knew it was true. By her logic, right? If she's going to say me, a person who has very much taken a stand that is pro-woman, it's not anti-anything, but it's seen as anti-trans. Okay, if that's the case, then wouldn't being pro-trans inherently be anti-woman? And what do we call someone who's anti-woman? We call them a misogynist. So I think we can use those tactics, saying things like, I'm speaking my truth, right? The other side has loved to say that for so long. That's what I'm doing now. I'm speaking my truth. How are they going to rebuttal that? Amen. For so long, that's what they pushed forward, right? The Me Too movement. It was speak your truth. Believe women. Now it's not believe women, and now it's shut up. Yep. And let your guard down, be vulnerable, and undress in front of that man, or else. So, all that to say, those are kind of the tactics I've learned. And just listening. Like, I do think too often on our side, and again, I say our side, I don't mean political sides. I mean the side of common sense. We're quick to shut down those who maybe we disagree with, and understandably so, because again, it is what I would describe a very basic, simple issue. They make it out to be complex. It's not complex. It's really not. But listening and I don't know, trying to advance and unite in a way that is not often fostered in this climate. So thank you.
Hi, Riley.
Hello.
My only question is, once you're done delivering your speech, or once you start to leave this facility, what will you reflect on this visit?
Well, it seems thus far a lot more peaceful than last time, which again I think it shows you how times have changed. Last time I gave a speech to a room full of protesters who came over from, like, the counter protest they had before was like a sign making event where they made a bunch of signs, they marched over together, they weren't allowed to bring their signs into the room, so they resorted to taking a Sharpie and writing all over their faces and their hands and their bodies and you know, holding it up the entire time. It's very different than that. So this is a win for me. Even having people, of course, in the room who I can tell don't agree with me. I've seen eye rolls. I've seen, you know, a couple like huffs under your breath. I see these things, right? But I appreciate people being here who don't agree with me. Truthfully, from the bottom of my heart, I really, really do. So.
Thank you, Riley.
Thank you.
Oh, impressive.
Hi, Ms. Gaines. My name is Autumn. I'm the political editor for the San Francisco State newspaper, the Golden Gate Express. But thank you so much for being here again. I did have one question, just based on President Trump's executive order for keeping men out of women's sports. Has that impacted the way you speak at all?
In what regard? I mean, it's changed because now we have substance to talk about, in the sense of there are things being done. Under the previous administration, of course, we have, again, lived experience. We have women who have been impacted, who have been affected, who have been harmed ultimately by this movement. But outside of what certain states were doing, there was nothing that was being done at the federal level to make sure this hasn't happened. So now, in terms of the wins that we can discuss, yes, but other than that, in terms of how I conduct myself, no, that hasn't really changed anything. But I do think with Donald Trump in office, it's provided a lot of people with cover from the sense of, you know, feeling like because it's happening at the federal level, they can then talk about it, right? It's happening there, we can discuss this. So I think it's provided some people cover, but I've felt secure enough with myself to speak the way that I do for a while. Not always. Again, I was very nervous and bashful and careful at first because I believed everything I was told. I believed I was being disrespectful if I opposed this, even though inherently I knew it was wrong. But now I'm pretty unabashed, I guess, in the way that I speak. Thank you.
You mentioned Gavin Newsom's podcast in your talk. I think you'd be the perfect person to go on that podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Be that John. If that did happen, what questions would you ask him? What would you say to him? Is there anything that you think that you could say to kind of visit him in his mind?
Well, one thing specifically that was brought up pretty recently in an episode with Bill Maher is Gavin Newsom said, look, I don't want to snitch on kids to their parents. That to me is a big red flag. It's not snitching on children to their parents. It's informing their parents of what's going on. That was in reference to some bills that are being discussed and legislated on here in this state. But I truthfully, I think Charlie Kirk does a really great job. He brought these questions very forthright, very direct, to which again we saw what Gavin Newsom did. He sat on the fence. Actually, no, I would say he did sit on the fence, because again, he followed it up with, but I want to be seen as kind and compassionate. I think that's what we're going to continue to see until he makes his announcement that he will be running for president in 2028. Following that podcast, again, where he said this is deeply unfair, he posts for Trans Visibility Awareness Day saying that he is the governor who will fight for trans rights, which again, cool, if that's your shtick. But how can in the same breath, again, that's just him winking at both sides. And that's what we see from Gavin Newsom all the time. So to just continue to call him out on it and to highlight it to the people. But the thing is, I think the people see it. 4 years ago, I don't think people maybe saw that with Gavin Newsom, at least not at the national level. Maybe people who had that experience in California did. But those of us, again, I was pretty tuned in, but some people weren't nationally. People see it now, and people know it's a shtick, and people see him as like a slimy car salesman. So I don't think he needs a whole lot of calling out. Hello.
Okay, hi. Hello, Riley. Just to preface this is like my first time I've ever done anything like this.
Welcome.
So, yeah.
Glad you're here.
Yeah. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm like trying to have a gotcha question or like, oh, I'm trying to expose Riley or whatever. But I just want to ask this question. Has being in this spot of defending women's sports, the way that you have led you to deeper avenues of defending women's sports in other ways? Because and I'm not accusing anyone here of doing this, but there is this sort of reputation that women's sports have that they're like, oh, they're like inferior, they're like the inferior version of women's sports. I only look at women athletes like, fill in the picture. I'm not gonna do that, but so I'm just, because the biggest fear that I have is that this whole protect women's sports is going to become the sort of thought term and cliche where you can only focus on like sort of one aspect of defending women's sports. So I just wanted to know if you had any opportunity to talk about like, say, things like the women's reputation or the fact that they're underfunded, which I understand is because people don't pay, but yeah, I just want to know if you had any interest in defending women's sports for the most part.
It's a good question, and truthfully, I don't think I've ever been asked this, but there are so many issues that exist in the space of women's sports beyond this issue. I think this is the most severe in terms of the outcome it will have, because there is no such thing as women's sports when you allow men into them. But there are, of course, other issues that women's sports are facing. Number one, there is a huge amount, especially in my sport of swimming, of sexual abuse. That's something that we've dealt with, me and my teammates. I have one teammate who is here. There was a coach in my sophomore year who I had to report to the Title IX office because of things that he was doing to me, things that he was saying to me, actions that he had, to which that day he left and never came back. So it has been like yes, to answer your question. I also coach Special Olympics, which is that is what inclusion looks like to me, including people who otherwise would not have the opportunity, the ability to compete, to succeed. So on that front, of course. But I agree with you from the perspective of, I do think there are some that use this issue as a political pawn, as a shtick to advance themselves, to climb a political ladder, which it's not that to me. It's real. Again, I lived it in many regards. Again, this issue, the issue of the sexual abuse that women face. I have a younger sister, right? All of these are at the forefront of my mind, and things that we're actively doing to combat.
Thank you. God bless you. Christ be with you.
Thank you.
Riley, thanks for you and your team flying out all this way. I just asked, just really briefly, not to post my son's face in any photos. The reason I brought my son is because we actually attended your event in Berkeley. And to SF State's credit, there are more protesters here than Berkeley. So I don't know what's going on at Berkeley. My question is, and feel free to just say no comment, but you did mention about the ongoing investigation or lawsuit, and don't know how familiar you are with the Corporate Equality Index. Do you think that has something to do and play with the state schools, or even schools that receive federal funding, that might have been some influence in the decisions that they made back then?
Well, I think under the previous administration, we know at this point that it does. We see how the ESG scores and certain things, how they affect corporate America, right? Ultimately, I mean, that's why you have companies like Bud Light doing what they do. They essentially lost $27 billion overnight. Then their next commercial was a big burly man on a motorcycle with the camo can. But we know things like ESG and the Corporate Equality Index affect these decisions and these leaders. And it's a good point to make, because this movement, right, it's not driven by red or blue. It is very, very much driven by green. It's driven by dollar signs. I think we see that especially on the medicalization side of things. where you see like, look, forget abortion, right? You can only charge $200 for an abortion. This is a lifelong patient, $70,000 to $100,000. I saw my hometown, Vanderbilt University, push these things forward. So absolutely, I believe the Corporate Equality Index, I believe ESG affects things like healthcare. I mean, across the board, absolutely. I do think that.
Just real quick comment. I just want to challenge those that say they're progressive, that we're actually not a progressive society, because if we look at Asia, they are a lot more pro-family with more diaper decks in men's and women's restrooms. And so I challenge folks that maybe we can change these all gender, neutral bathrooms to maybe just being family rooms or unisex restrooms. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey Riley, thank you so much for coming out here. A little background, or rather, I want to applaud you for everything you've done, especially in the guise of the First Amendment. I was in the United States Marine Corps. I served for 4 years, and now I'm a senior here.
Thank you.
I mean that wholeheartedly. I think the First Amendment is perhaps the most important amendment. And growing up, I saw a lot of anti-white sentiment, like you mentioned, telling little girls that whites are evil. I'm not white myself. I come from a bloodline where our country doesn't really have a First Amendment, and let alone women's rights. I noticed that colleges growing up, they did nothing about it. There was no funding cuts or any outrage from government. I voted for Trump in 2016. I voted for Trump in 2020, but I could not, against my convictions, vote for him in 2024 because I feared that the writing on the wall, there would be backlash against anyone who opposed this current regime. Now again, I'm a conservative. I love Trump. I really do. But I think what we're seeing right now, and I would like your opinion, how do you feel about it? What we're seeing right now with student protesters who are being imprisoned for criticizing the state of Israel and the ongoing conflict in Gaza at our expense should scare all of us, both left, both on the right, liberal or conservative. We always like to talk about unifying the country. I think this is something very, very important to discuss. What's your take?
This is interesting because again I haven't been asked this, but it's something I've talked with my husband about, given the fact that again he came over to the U.S. to understand more of I mean these students that are being deported or sent back to their home countries. They're here on a student visa. So I was asking my husband, what do these visas entail? What are the guidelines here? Like, as if you're here on a student visa, like, are you still entitled to those First Amendment rights that us as citizens have? And he explained it to me as basically a visa is an invitation to be in this country, but that invitation can be expelled or can be taken away if, again, you don't meet the qualifications at that point that I think they initially believed you would have in coming into this country. The way that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has described it now as saying, look, had we known that you were anti-American, we wouldn't have let you in the first place. That is why we are sending you out of the country now. I think in explaining it in that way, it helps make a little sense because I think I initially had that same like, wait, this is kind of concerning. You can just send people out of this country. Don't they have the right to protest too? But the shorter answer is if you're not a citizen, you ultimately aren't extended those same rights that we have. And I think the problem, many of the people that are being deported, virtually all of them that are being deported outside of, I think, South Sudan. I think many who are here on a visa from South Sudan are being deported because of government affair type things. But otherwise, I think it ultimately resorts to violence. Those students who have resorted to violence to conduct themselves. Which I at that point agree in the sense that if you're being violent, what are you doing here? If you hate America, what are you doing here? Go back to your own country if you hate it here so much. But I think there are concerns to be had, especially as things continue, and to stay vigilant, because there are a lot of people, again, on our side who worship Trump. And I'm not one of those people. I agree with a lot of what he does. I support the president, of course, but there's one person that I worship, one entity that I worship, and it's not Donald Trump. I think there were some concerning things leading up to the election, right? In Pennsylvania, there was a billboard that said, "In Elon we trust." And I found that to be pretty blasphemous, truthfully, as a Christian. It felt like that was a knock to Christianity, right? It is in God we trust. So I am willing to call out. So I do agree there's value, of course, in staying vigilant about what this administration is doing. Thank you, I appreciate it. And thank you for your service.
As the inseminated person of a potentially future inseminated person, that's the mother of a girl, for those of you who don't speak Wisconsin. I cannot even tell you how grateful I am to you doing what you're doing. And I don't have the right to be proud of you, I'm not your parent, but I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of and how you have led with grace and dignity. And I have a question for you, but I also wanted to share, I was just canceled from
Welcome to the club.
an event I was supposed to speak at tomorrow night on a totally different topic. It's a financial topic. I was the only person providing the counterpoint on a 7-person panel, and apparently some people called me transphobic because I have supported girls, female-only spaces.
And I'll just say to this really briefly, again, the other side claims to embrace diversity. They hate diverse thought. That's what I've learned. They hate diverse thought. They'd rather not have you there at all. Don't provide your counterpoint. They'd rather think in unison anyways.
That's exactly right. It's a total echo chamber tomorrow night. And it's a topic that has nothing to do with this, but it was a way to get me off the panel. So I am, in a tiny, tiny way, a kindred spirit. But the question I wanted to ask you, as an alum of University of Pennsylvania, I was very distraught to see what happened. I was very distraught to see videos after the fact, because as you said, they could not speak up at the time this was happening. Have you in any way engaged with the other women of your cohort who were impacted by Leah Thomas being on?
Absolutely, absolutely. So myself and 19 other athletes are suing the NCAA now, which is super fun to see somebody in pockets. But I imagine, again, we'll be victorious in this because they explicitly violated Title IX. The federal law being that, again, you cannot discriminate on the basis of sex. That's exactly what they did. So myself and 19 other athletes are signed on to this suit. And we've seen now UPenn, where 4 of those athletes who were teammates with Thomas, who were terrified to speak at the time, have now come out and also in a separate lawsuit suing the NCAA, suing the Ivy League, and suing Harvard actually for hosting the Ivy League championship. So yes, they're speaking now, even if it's on a smaller platform. Many of them are still scared. They're scared they're going to lose their jobs. I talked to the fencer today. Have you guys seen the video of the fencer who took the knee? She's terrified. She's going to lose her job. Her family doesn't agree with her. Like she's like, I don't feel very supported in this effort, but I know it's the right thing to do. So I'm willing to lose my job if that's what it takes. All that to say now, I think largely to a credit to the cover that Trump is providing and being kind of bold and saying this is wrong, we are seeing more women speak up who were ultimately impacted by this. So yes. And UPenn just lost $175 million in federal funding, which is wild to me. As a private university, how are they taking 170, or more than that actually. And the endowments that they receive, it's wild. $20 billion in endowments. Why are we giving them? Why are we giving them? I don't know what a Nittany Lion is, to be honest with you. Big Nittany Lion. I'm like, what is this?
That's Penn State.
Isn't that what he said? He said Penn State is better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
With trans individuals still existing even with the attempt of a racial-free policy, would you or have you ever been receptive to the regression of that community faces? And would you ever, like, if it doesn't necessarily affect you, but you cause something, not you directly, but you know.
Get your question out, please.
Right. Yes. So have you ever been receptive to those sort of consequences on that side of the end of the spectrum? Because at the end of the day, we are still all people and we are still people of one country. So despite our differences, don't you think we should keep chipping away to find some sort of middle ground?
What would a middle ground look like to you?
Regardless of how you see America or your America, others have their
Our
own.
America doesn't change the America. It is one, right? We can look at it differently, but it is our America. Go ahead.
Exactly. Everybody has their own perceptions and also their own blind spots.
But reality is also real. Yep.
Yeah.
So if there is something that, that's my question. Are you receptive to?
Well, you asked about a middle ground. What does that look like to you? Like a middle ground, what? Like, what should women have to compromise here?
Well,
Like, should we have to give away our rights to opportunities? Is that what you're saying?
no. I think cis women should be entitled to speak on if something is affecting them in any sense of the word. But also, what does that leave to trans people? Because at the end of the day,
The exact same opportunities. The exact same opportunities. No one is, you use this word erasure. Who is erasing trans individuals, people who identify as trans? Because not me. It's not me. The stand that I've taken, again, it's not one that's against any body, against anything, against any group of people. It is very, very much a stand that is for something. And the stand that I have taken is a stand that's for women, for, again, reality, for science, for common sense, for privacy, for safety, for equality. That's the stand that I've taken. I'm not erasing anybody. People who identify as trans are absolutely, they should still compete, right? But compete in the category that aligns with your sex. No one is barring trans athletes from competing. That's such a misleading headline that unfortunately you have fallen for, that people are banning trans individuals from private and public life. It's just not true. I could care less what someone does. Again, I could care less if people stand outside and scream. I could care less. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. How someone wants to dress in their free time, what they want to do behind closed doors, that's, again, the beauty of America. But when it does infringe on me, and when it does infringe on my rights, or when my taxpayer dollars have to pay for it, that's when I raise a concern. That's when I have a problem. So this idea that trans people are being erased, not by me. Next question. I don't think we'll have time for these, unless they can be brief. We'll do these last 5 and we'll be brief. Yes, go ahead.
I'll be brief. I just had a comment. Earlier you talked about military and first responders having courage, and I served 5 years in the Navy, and during the Biden administration, they started to allow men to say that they're women and grow out their hair, have makeup on, and have a beard at the same time. As someone who can't even grow a beard, like I can be a little scrub every now and again. I have to shave every single morning. It's a very frustrating place to be. I couldn't speak out at it at the time, so you have a lot of courage for speaking out on it, and I thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, go quick. Yeah.
Not only just for like that aspect of it, there's also girls that have to, there's girls in the military. You don't want military dudes going into girls.
I'd say
That's
not.
kind of self-explanatory.
I'd say not. Thank you, and thank you for your service. I absolutely believe that the strongest military possible, so thank you.
Hi, Riley. Thank you so much for your courage. I've been really inspired by your courage, and I appreciated how last year during the Trump campaign you said that you're voting for Trump because you're a woman. I love that line. And yeah, I posted about you 28 times in my public Telegram channel. It's called Love, Life, Truth, and it's got 1,400 subscribers. And but yeah, a friend of mine took a selfie with you, and I loved the chance to take a picture with you too, if that's possible.
Hang around and I'll come find you. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey,
how you doing?
Great. I'm a college athlete and a queer person. I don't know how I feel about trans athletes and athletics yet. That's why I'm here tonight. Are you familiar with Tia Claire Toomey?
I'm not.
She's the 7-time CrossFit Games champion. A great woman athlete. And so I've seen her on TV compete against men in the CrossFit Games. So my question to you is, and become out dominant, proving herself as a badass person. My question is, how would you feel about an opportunity where men's and women's sports have mixed meets to rank athletic performances based off of human performance?
Well, I'm all for it, so long as again it's transparent from the jump, like it's a mixed event. And I think it would prove the point that I'm making. So I'm all for that. And to your point, there are certainly women phenoms, right? This was the point actually in a Senate Judiciary hearing that it was actually the president of the Human Rights Campaign who was sat next to me who made the point, Serena Williams can beat lots of men. Of course, Serena Williams can beat lots of men in tennis. She was making this point directly to Senator Kennedy, which if you don't know, he's like an old fat man. So if you're making the point that Senator Kennedy would be beaten by Serena Williams, of course. But Serena Williams also was beat by the 203rd ranked male tennis player who played 18 holes of golf before, who drank and smoked in between sets, and who said he played like a 600th ranked player. So the idea of having like a mixed event, again with that transparency disclosed, I'm all for it. So long as everyone consents to participate. I think especially if it's not a combat sport where you're necessarily like colliding and hitting one another, because then I think safety concerns arise. But something like lifting, I think it would be a great opportunity to ultimately prove the point that I'm making. But I appreciate you being here. It's super cool that you're here. So thank you.
I just wanted to make a quick point. My mother served in the military. My father served in the military. Both of my parents are veterans. That's actually why I can go to this school. Thank you to Cal Vet. You can clap when you want, but you were just yelling at me, so I'm going to ask that you were quiet now. So, I would just like to ask the women in the room who are in support of this woman here and who believe in women supporting women, are you proud of yourselves?
Yes.
Are you proud of yourselves?
Yes.
For discrediting my gender and telling me that I do not, as a woman, a child of 2 veterans, that I do not know who I am? Are you proud of yourselves for being disrespectful and booing me and yelling at me and shouting at me out of this room? Are you proud of yourselves? Because I will say that I am incredibly disappointed. And I think the veterans who go to this school and the children of the veterans who are allowed at the school would be incredibly disappointed in you women. Who to choose to discredit my female identity, me being a female from birth, that's on my birth certificate. Keep going, because you're proving my point. You are being disrespectful, you're misrepresenting Riley Gaines here. I think that you are an incredibly respectful woman, and I appreciate the way that you have regarded yourself in this matter. I think that your supporters are quite frankly being disrespectful. I am disappointed, and I really, really do hope that you guys are proud of yourselves. And tell this to your next veteran. Tell this to the people that you supposedly support. Say this during March, during Veterans History Month. I really hope that you are proud of yourselves. I really do.
Do you feel better?
Thank you, Riley. I am going to go now because I am very frustrated by all of the quite immature bullying, the booing as well. So I'll let you guys boo me out. Thank you. I am incredibly disappointed. I hope you guys are proud.
Thank you for all the moralizing.
Point to make too. Also, thank you. What the people who even walking into this event have faced to be here, and I'm sorry that those two things are. Her presence being here, the way that she addressed her question, those two things are, whether she wants them to be or not, they're correlated together. And so the frustration has built up just as she had frustration. It's frustrating for us too, to where you feel like sometimes, I had people reach out to me and said, I can't come because I'm terrified. I'm terrified of walking through the protesters to get to the event. So I think the frustration maybe exists on both sides.
I used to wrestle. I've had to wrestle against both men and women. Wrestling against women is very uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
I think any guy can probably agree. It's
Yep.
pretty uncomfortable. You don't know where to grab or whatever. And so I found it great with the guys where we work out. We lift, we box, whatever, because you want to get away from all this leftist, I guess, ideology I think force into sports. Do you think we should have more of that, where people go and form their own clubs and groups to work out, to have fun and just do sports together, so we are free from all this leftist ideology that's forced on our drugs?
I come at this from two angles. Number one, I absolutely agree in having those anchors, right? Kind of like that support wheel you described, and keeping you grounded. I have that in my life, and I am so grateful. And I compare that with people who don't have that. Again, like talking with the fencer today, saying she doesn't have a lot of friends who she feels like she can talk about this with. She doesn't have a lot of family who she feels like she can talk about this with. That's so different than me. I have so much support in my life. All of my family, all of my friends, even my friends who disagree with the stance that I've taken, they know me, they know my heart, they know I'm not coming at this from a place of hatred or ill will or animosity, right? So having those anchors are so valuable, and ultimately, I think, again, speaking personally, keeping me going and motivated and reminding me why we do what we do. But I guess on the other hand, I have so much respect for you guys in California. I really do. Those of you who kind of hold down the fort, because if you didn't, involve yourself, even if it's involuntary, in this leftist, twisted ideology, then who in the world would, right? We have so many, like I said, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. We have so many of you, flocking by the, tens of thousands, really, of you coming from California to Tennessee, and they all say, I couldn't do it anymore, right? I'm a refugee, I'm one of you. They preface, I'm from California, but I promise I'm one of you. I feel the way that you feel. I'm not coming to ruin your state. They all say it like that. So I would find myself conflicted. If I lived in this, I was just talking before this, I could not imagine living here, truthfully. I really, really couldn't. I would have a really hard time, but I have so much respect for those of you who do.
It's not easy.
I would imagine not. So I think there's value in being in those circles where, again, you're not surrounded by people who totally agree with you, but you do, on the other hand, have to have those people and hold on to them, because otherwise you fall into it. We see it all the time, whether it's on college campuses, whatever it is. It's easy to, they've laid the groundwork over the past, over decades, really. People think it's happened over 5 years, 10 years. It's been much, much longer than that, where this groundwork has been laid. That's why it's been so easy to do what they do. That's how COVID, right? I think so many of us were so easily manipulated. And that groundwork that we saw during COVID, it's the same groundwork that is being used to perpetrate this movement. So it's easy to fall into that. So be that voice, I think, in those places, who's able to debunk that. And what we find in doing that, again, there's nothing I can't rebuttal on this topic. Of course, there are other topics where I'm like, please don't ask me about that. I don't want to talk about tariffs. I don't know. I'm just a girl. But this topic, there's nothing you can trip me up on. There's really not. Any question anyone had, please bring it. But I appreciate you, so thank you. It means so much to me that you guys are, here, willing to listen, willing to engage, because that's certainly more than I saw 2 years ago. So thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming. This will conclude our event. If you are a student volunteer, make sure that you stay around. And just a couple